And hello. Wow, what a world we're living in right now. What is it, the 25th of January 2026? And well, we had the big Trump speech on where he was at Davos. That was a couple of days ago. And it was like a recap of his first year. But he said so many interesting and amazing things. But what do the media obsess about? One little thing that he says, and then that just covers the whole news agenda until we've moved on to the next thing, and no one's properly discussed a lot of the other amazing and interesting things that he said. One of the interesting things he said was that when America does well, the world does well. When America's doing poorly, the world does poorly. And I agree with that. I think we've all got, I mean, especially us in England, we have a bit of America in our heart because we've just watched American TV and movies. And, so it gets to you, and the land of the free, the American dream, you know, if that prospers, then there's kind of hope for us all, isn't there? Because if that doesn't prosper, and what prospers is dictatorships and communists and that sort of stricter enforcement upon people's lives, that's not really a great hope for us all, is it? And then in some ways we can see how the West became soft, but I'd just say it took a wrong turn. It took a wrong turn when it decided that God didn't exist, Oh, stop so silly. There's no God. Science has proved that. Yeah, absolute not. Um, and then we started doing, there were Satanists and then just, all the gay stuff. Let's be proud of everybody being gay, or not everybody being gay, but gay people, pride, and yeah, so what? It just wasn't important. It didn't sort of make me want to work hard for my country. And it's very interesting how we're seeing the Hitler. Hitler is making a comeback. Um, um, I've known quite a lot of Hitler quotes in my life. My dad used to use them. So saying Hitler said, "Most people don't know what they want to do. Those who do should act." A really good sort of saying. And anyway, obviously he was, painted as a terrible person, and he did terrible things. And I would say that, his plan, how it started out, may have been all right, you know. Um, but power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Everybody. You go along in the street, you see another person, you've both got to go Heil Hitler, all right? Imagine if we had to do that with, like, say, Trump. Everybody had to say when they met each other, even if Trump's not there or nowhere near, you both got to go, "Hail Trump!" Yeah. So obviously Hitler went too far. But I was watching a couple of his speeches with my son, sort of translated into English. And very interesting one from 1922 when he's talking about democracy. And he's like, democracy is all well and good. Obviously, I'm not quoting, I'm paraphrasing. Democracy is all well and good, but if your voice can't be heard, your opinion on a certain matter can't be heard, then it's absolutely pointless. And the way he was saying this, when he accuses the Jews, that they are, they've got control of all the media, and they're only allowing these viewpoints to be spoken about, and therefore when it comes to people voting, they're voting with this in their mind, and that's and they vote for one party or the other. And he explained, you have a party system, there's 2 or 3 parties maybe, and when the people get tired of one, they vote in the other, and it just goes on. And I've thought that too about democracy. So hearing Hitler talk about that in 1922 is quite interesting. And then he spoke about communism, and he said, well, we can't be for communism because communism doesn't allow ownership. And without ownership, how can you take pride? And the other thing he said, which I really liked, was if you love your country, you're going to fight for it. You're going to work hard to make your country good. But if you hate your country, you're going to fight to weaken the country. And I think we see that a lot. We're seeing it right now in America. The lefties when they lose, they do spit their dummies out, and they obfuscate. They make things difficult. We saw it in England with the Tories in. There was just strikes, different. I know we've still got strikes now, but there were way more under the Tories. They obviously don't like it, and then they don't want things to go well while the Tories are in power. And it seems that now with Trump, there's a big faction that they just don't want things to go well while Trump is in power. Because then he'll if he does really well, he'll get voted in again, and that'll be the end of the Democrats, and they're fighting for their survival. But it's civil war, isn't it? So in a sense, democracy politics, especially in a 2-party system, is just perpetual civil war. And I'm sure the Republicans and the Tories, when they drag, I bet the rich people that they drag their feet, they probably don't invest. It's a perpetual state of civil war. So what Hitler was saying is, well, what he called it nationalist socialist. And the thing is, this is the fact of the matter. We have a world with 150 odd nations on it, right? So each of those nations is important. And if you're born in a particular nation, you've got to work for that nation, and that nation has to take responsibility for you. We might want to live in a world with no borders. That might be the long-term desire, but we're not there. There's no, we see how it's worked with the EU. They all get together, so we'll be more powerful, and it'll all be easier. That was the theory, I guess. And you can move around, and it won't matter, but they speak so many different languages throughout Europe. It's so people are probably going to stay in their own countries anyway. It doesn't benefit most people. So for most people, you'd be much better off focusing on your nation. And if your nation focused on you, and this is what we're seeing, isn't it? Globalism is failing because we can't have an international court that works, because who's the authority behind it? You'd need a world leader, and nobody's going to accept that. That's why America, being the most powerful country in the world, its leader is de facto world leader. Because let's face it, China might have more people, and they might even have, more power in some ways. But everything they do is for the American, isn't it? They're making stuff for the Americans, they're making stuff for the West. So, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing if it wasn't for America. So they, without America doing well, they've got no purpose. So yeah, Hitler said a nationalistic socialism. So I don't know what really. I think the socialism was, a degree of fairness. that it's not all about people going out making loads of money. He hated the stock exchange, I think, as well. Or was that somebody else? Anyway, so the country should be responsible for its citizens, and it governs towards the best for those citizens. Now, Hitler obviously had a plan for more living space. I don't know the details of it, but maybe in 1922 he didn't. But he did in 1922, he did feel he was against the whole system. And he felt that that was orchestrated and led by Jews. I don't know. I don't know. All right? I just don't know. I have been thinking quite a lot about the Jews, and mainly because in the Revelations it mentions, and if you don't know, I've done a decoding of Revelations on the Rebel for Jesus channel, and I think it was, and it talks twice about the synagogue of Satan and the false Jews. The false Jews and the synagogues, or synagogue of Satan. Now, false Jews. There we go. Right, now, a lot of people will go, oh, that's written in the Bible, who gives a shit? It's just a load of made up crap. We are seeing so much truth in the Bible. All those old stories, there's physical evidence for them. They are pretty much true, right? Maybe not absolutely every detail. Someone might have embellished. You can't prove that or disprove it. It's up to you. If you want to believe David killed Goliath with a stone, I like to believe it. I think it's good. Anyway, there's also, the stuff in Revelations which I've decoded is making me feel that that is definitely true. And the old Nostradamus was something that was created to put people off the scent, because the future has been laid out. The last days have been worked out. I've worked it out to 2128. That's when this civilization will be reset. It's possible that we may survive and take our learnings from this and our history with us, or we might not. We might have to restart. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, in that Revelations, it talks about the false Jews and the synagogue of Satan. Now, when I first got onto YouTube in 2011, 2012, I was really interested to find these GMS Israelites, Great Millstone, Hebrews to Negroes, and their interpretations of the Bible and how they do it. And I really liked it. And some of them were just so over the top, or hate all whites, blah blah blah. Others understood it's the spirit that matters. That's what's important, not the color of your skin. But the idea that, because my first question was, well, hang on, if you're the real Jews, who are the white Jews in Israel? And they say that's Esau. But so having thought about it for many years, to me, if I've read the whole Bible, and so the better description of the Jews suits the blacks more than it suits these white Jews, whether they came from Europe, Middle East, whatever, the Sephardi Jews, the Mizrahi Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews, right? So, yeah, bit puzzling, but who else have been taken in slave ships to distant lands and taken in yokes of iron, right? So that is mentioned in the Bible, that God is telling them, he's going to let Israel be invaded, and they're going to be kicked out, and they're going to be scattered all over the world, all over it, right? So, but it really does suit the what happened to the blacks, and in the Rastafarians, they seem to have contained some of that information. They held on to it, and then you've got the Ethiopian Jews. they had converted to Christianity way back, but they had kept all the traditions. They had kept these books, and they hadn't had any contact with the outside world. And they're black, right? They are bona fide, definitely Jews. And they're black with tight curly hair. Musical talents. Love colour. And are not money lenders or usurers, which is, against the commandment. Thou shalt not lend or borrow money, however it says it. And what are the Jews famous for? Even back in the 1300s, they were money lenders. England kicked out the Jews in 1350 odd, partly because they owed them loads of money, but they blamed them for the Black Death. Now, I think that's unfair. Obviously, they obviously weren't the cause of the Black Death. So that was unfair. But all these Jews end up Poland and Germany, money lenders, and they are the Ashkenazi Jews, who vetoed the Ethiopian Jews from being accepted as proper Jews. The Septar, I keep getting that one wrong, I think. Septar Jews or something from Spain, the Mizrahi Jews from around the Middle East. They have more Middle Eastern DNA, I think that's how they measure it, than the Ashkenazi Jews, who are more sort of got more European DNA. And it's the Ashkenazi ones who vetoed the Ethiopian Jews, who are the most bona fide Jews and should have been accepted Jews. They vetoed them. So for me, that was a bad move. You have shown yourselves to be probably the false Jews, and therefore false Jews, synagogue of Satan. Now, I don't want to be accused of trying to initiate any sort of violence towards Jews. I'm totally anti-violent. I'm totally pacifist. But so I shouldn't be arrested for being anti-Semitic, am I? Because I'm talking about the real Jews. So if you accuse me of going against the Ashkenazi Jews, well, I can accuse you of going against the Ethiopian Jews, who are way more bona fide. You should see their church. They've dug churches out of the rock. Amazing feats. Let's not say that the other Jews aren't talented. I mean, they certainly are. We see them in the sitcoms, very entertaining. Good writers. And they have got the curly hair. See, I'm starting to think. Right, so let me get to the point. I always thought, like you're reading the Bible stories and stuff, and, it seemed that the Jews were different from everybody else. They were different from those around them. And they must have been seen as different. It was noticeably different. And I think it's the curly hair. You see people from Russia, Mongolia, China, Japan, all around there, dead straight hair, right? Dead straight, not a twist. So I think God's promise to Abraham, your descendants are gonna be like sands in the beach, that billions and billions, whatever. So even if a little bit of that genetic got into your family line, you are Abraham's descendant. And, and because of what's happened in history, because Israel was invaded twice and they were thrown out here, thrown out there, they're all over the place. And I think you can tell if you've got curly hair, you're a descendant of Abraham, and therefore a Jew. So, yeah. What do you think about that? And just reassure, I'm not inciting violence against anyone, right? All's fair in love and war, as they say. Some have their way of doing it, and some have their way of doing it, right? There's a karma in the universe. So if someone's doing something wrong against, because you feel it and you've got a conscience, you can feel what's wrong and right if you decide to be sensitive to it. and karma will do what it's going to do, right? And it's God's plan. So nobody do anything because of anything I say, so that I can't be accused or arrested, because this is the country we're living in at the moment. You're not allowed to say anything against, not allowed to say anything that might incite people to go and do anything. Well, I guess I'm lucky because I got hardly any views on my channel. So I think that should cover it for the Jews, really. Although according to Revelation, they certainly will be playing a part later on. Not so much now in this 2033 fifth trumpet, when the bowl of wrath is poured onto the seat of the beast, which I think could be a good thing for most people, therefore. And, I don't think it will come out then about the false Jews. They'll be coming out later doing stuff. But yeah, enough about that. Enough about that. I just had one of those thoughts, like, am I actually recording? Yeah. I've done all that and I forgot to push record. Right, so I got a couple of things on my list. Fluoride. If you wanted to, yes. If you wanted to sneak an endocrine disruptor into the population, how would you do it? Now, what's the devil's favorite sin? Vanity. Pride, vanity. Like, ever since I was a kid, told to brush my teeth twice a day. We saw adverts for toothpaste, fun adverts. Blue minted gel and Aquafresh with its 3 colours. And the toothpaste would get squeezed onto the toothpaste brush. A long line like this. Ooh, beautiful. Now, luckily, my mum told me, don't put that much on. Just put a pea. Pea will do. And, but yeah, I did it twice a day. Fill my mouth with that. And if you go to the shops, you look at a whole rack of the toothpaste. You see all the different ones. I mean, since, I don't know, when I looked, 2008, 10, that sort of time I was looking, couldn't find, except with one exception, everyone was Colgate. If you looked at the ownership, Actress owned by Colgate now. Oh, it's owned by Colgate. Oh, and where they made? Oh, they're all made in one factory. For the Europe's toothpaste, it's all made in one factory in Poland. And the one exception was that pink one, that Arm and Hammer. That doesn't have fluoride in it. But if you check the ingredients, there's a whole load more crappy stuff. And when I've used it, I've not liked the feeling I get next day or whatever. So I don't use it again. Anyway, so you've got no choice. And they used to put lower amounts of fluoride in children's toothpaste. So I bought that for it. And then that's gone out the window. They get even more now. Now, the problem with ingesting fluoride, and okay, you don't swallow the foam, but it's seeping into your gums. Just like if you filled your mouth with cocaine, and then rinsed your mouth and spat it out. A lot of the cocaine would have gone into your gums. It's a very good place for taking stuff in. So the idea with it being good for your teeth is that fluoride, very quick to react with anything, very fast. And so the teeth could grow faster and bigger. But I'd draw back more brittle. So it's not ideal. But you can pass it off as being good for your teeth. But then at the age of 11, you'll go to the dentist and he'll recommend you have a brace. And he'll take out a couple of teeth here and a couple of teeth here, because they know there's going to need more room. Now, I refused to have a brace, and as a result of that, in my mid-30s, I had an impacted wisdom tooth because there was no room in my mouth for these teeth. And I went to the dentist. They said, you'll have to go to hospital and have a general anaesthetic to pull that out. I said, well, why don't you just take out the tooth that's next to it, that's impacting it? It's got much shorter roots, it's crumbling, it's got holes in it anyway, we're feeling it. Just take the fucking thing out. Oh, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So I left it. I didn't do anything. And I had a period of time where I had this thing and I had to pop it and pain and yeah, lovely. But eventually it's sorted itself out by ejecting a few teeth on its own. And, I'm struggling to try and keep hold of my teeth. So when I found this stuff out about fluoride, I stopped brushing my teeth. And that was a mistake. Don't do that, kids. Okay? It was a mistake to stop brushing my teeth for 10 to 11 years. I've lost quite a few. You don't want to see that. I refuse to use the fluoride. I refuse to get that whitening toothpaste and because it's got fluoride in it. And since I stopped brushing my teeth and stopped taking in fluoride and I started drinking rainwater too, rather than the tap water, my pineal gland decalcified and I've got a fully working endocrine system. And even though my teeth are disgusting to look at, and I'm not going to get a girlfriend, I'm not gonna take that route down the vanity lane and sacrifice what I have got, which is a working endocrine system. And I meditate and it works and I love it. Right? So that's just not going to happen. My teeth are going to be probably getting worse. But I have, last couple for 2 years, started brushing them every other night, and I make my own tooth powder. So I use xylitol as the sweetener, which is made from wood, natural sweetener. Baking soda for getting rid of the stains, I suppose. Red desert clay, which you're not supposed to use in your mouth because it might have some small amounts of arsenic in it. But for its other benefits, yes, I use red desert clay quite a lot of things. Put it in the bath, put it in my tooth powder. Cinnamon, good for your mouth. And cloves. And the cloves is the best thing. That's the best ingredient. Grind up those cloves. Yeah, then that lovely taste leaves it. Anyway, so I'm hoping to hold on to the rest of my teeth. But I'm not going to use fluoride. So this is the conspiracy theory that the powers that be, whatever, want to keep the population dumbed down. Because if we're not satisfied with doing our daily dead end jobs, same fucking thing every day, if that doesn't satisfy us, they've got a problem. I'm sure there's other ways they could have done it. They could have made jobs more interesting or shorter periods of time so you get more time off to do some interesting things. Because, the way we had it, like people worked and worked and worked and then they're retired. And when they're retired, they were just depressed because they had fuck all to do it every day and they hadn't spent time developing hobbies and skills elsewhere that they could have pursued, lots of them. Well, they just died, which suited the government perfectly because, great, now we don't have to pay out your long pension, which we promised you. So this big old con job, look, they won't know because they'll be dumbed down with this fluoride. So when we're born as a baby, we have a perfectly working endocrine system, right? And we can telepathy and everything. We talk to God and all of that easily, piece of cake, but then we start getting these things into our system and, you don't see the same result in if someone's been brought up in a tribe in Africa. they don't have the same issues that we do when you start dumping fluoride and breaking the connection with the endocrine system. Kids get upset. Have you heard of the terrible twos? And then they get used to it. Yeah, you get used to being at a lower level, and your interests and your pursuits get on a lower level. And that happens again in adolescence. By the time you're just interested in money, fucking, and eating and drinking, and that will do. That's your life, mate. That's all you're going to get now. And then by the time you're 40, you're almost depressed, and you might manage to sort of fight your way through it and survive to old age. I mean, luckily, God does get involved. Right. But fluoride, I'm absolutely 100% convinced is no good for you. Do not ingest it. I wouldn't. But, yes, if you wanted to sneak an endocrine disruptor into the population, how would you do it? The perfect way would be with vanity. If you want a nice smiley teeth, as we always see on the TV, everyone's got smiley white teeth. You can go to Turkey and get yourself some new smiley white teeth. Oh, I wouldn't. Don't muck with your root canals. Causes arthritis. Don't have a root canal. You have a problem in your body for the rest of your life. Anything like that, just don't do it. Yeah, but that's how that's how they get us through the devil's favorite sin, vanity. And by the way, I believe that the devil is just either God on a bad day, which I don't think exists. I don't think God has bad days. He's evolved that far. He doesn't have bad days. It's the devil's advocate. It's God testing. It's God. The devil is God testing us. Because, well, anyway, I won't go into that because I wasn't going to. But if you work out, devil knows everything God does, Yeah, work it out. And who'd be the existence of a devil? Who'd be the devil entity that exists? It just wouldn't exist. So, yeah, I'm in an RN about making this video for ages. So the Jews thing's been on my mind. The fluoride thing, well, I thought I'd jot that down because, but I've had, I've always been a bit reluctant to talk about my soulmate too much because I don't want to spoil things. I don't think I can spoil things, so that's okay. I had a little breakthrough. I'd say it was about 2 months ago-ish, maybe a bit less, that a feeling I had suppressed and ignored came back. So no wonder I didn't feel like I was getting nearer to my soulmate or anything, because I had this feeling and I'd decided it was something else and pushed it away. Like, it's weird how, even though I preach, don't do this, I say it all the time, but I quite easily just did it to myself. And that was back in 2018, I think. So what happened is I'd had this feeling come up in 2018-ish. Knot in my stomach. Oh, horrible pain. And even though, getting near and like, oh, this is hard. This is horrible. What the fuck is this? And I somehow quickly decided or something that it was the devil. Right? And I have to hold on to it to stop it going out where? Dumbass. What an idiot. This is what happens to you when you start thinking you're Christ and stuff like that. You get some mad ideas, I suppose. So, yeah, shouldn't do more of that. Leave that alone. So this feeling comes up again about a month and a half ago, and I'm suddenly like, this reminds me, and I'd done it before, back when I was 19 or something like that. So a long time ago, and I'd done some dodgy mushrooms, and I'd having this not feeling in my stomach. I don't want this. Pushed it down. Ignore, and it did stay away for a bit, right? Came back 2018, thought it was the devil. Push it away, ignore it. Comes back towards the end of 2025. I'm like, is this my soulmate? And then the feeling started to, because this is what so I would say pain is the result of not feeling deeper, a deeper feeling. So you get pain on your knee, your elbow, your head, whatever. Allow it to come in, right? And quite often you know what it is. You know what it's about. And we've just seen, if you don't know what it's about, you'll reject it, or just remain a pain. And if you get these sort of pains, during meditation or sitting watching the telly or laying in bed, these are the ones I'm talking about, right? Not banging your elbow and going, oh, let the pain come in. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about pains that just come up, feelings come up, pains. If you meditate, you'll start feeling a pain somewhere. And start letting it in, right? So, so that is the premise, right? So, I think, when I say to myself, this is my soulmate, and then it changes, right? That moment starts to enable to come up nearer the heart. It's already quite close. This is what worried me, I think, before, because usually the pain, say it's on my big toe, it's more intense and hot and painful the further away it is, so it's on the extremities. So anyway, so I feel this so it's a breakthrough for me. So that meditation session was a breakthrough. I'm like, wow, that felt amazing. And I think even the next day I had a temptation again of going back into the Christ energy, and I was a bit confused. And it does feel like there was a lot of difficulty in kind of accepting this soulmate feeling. But anyway, so I had a great 5 weeks, right? No lust towards anyone else. It just been about my soulmate. All the feelings were lovely, and but then it was sort of going a bit quiet, a bit sort of wasn't really feeling the connections so strongly. And I was just watching TV. I think I was getting this pain in my left testicle. I was like, what's that? And you hear all the time on the radio, oh, get yourself checked for testicular cancer. So that's usually the first thing in your mind. Oh God, does this mean I'm going to get testicular cancer or something like that, So what's that do? That rejects the pain, doesn't it? So then and I couldn't, and I wasn't okay, I'll just be totally honest, right? I tend to masturbate once a week. I do it in the bath. Catch it on my stomach, flip it in the sink. And so I get my weekly wank. So for these, reconnect myself, brilliant. So these 5 weeks, I'm able to feel my soulmate, feel the love connection, and I could masturbate. The best wanks with the soulmate. And because they last much longer, and the feeling continues way longer. And there's no unpleasantness. It's quite often if I'm wanking about someone who's it's quick and it's over. I don't feel good. Anyway, so 5 weeks in a row, And that was a record because I've had connections with my soulmate before, and I've been able to get into that and be able to masturbate about her or with her. And but then, it lasted a couple of weeks and then went, and so this was like a record, like five weeks in a row. It's like, wow. So then this ball pain, and couldn't get connection with her. Decided to masturbate about somebody else, and then yeah, that was just one time on Friday. Today's Sunday, and then I'd had a bit of more ball pain on the right testicle, and then that night I think I had a bit more, not major pain, just a bit of pain, and for some reason I wasn't trying to feel it. Also, coincidentally, I run out of weed, smoking the leaf and the stuff for a few days. So I wasn't even bothering to meditate, right? Then last night, got some weed and a smoke, baked some bread. Suddenly had this idea, oh, make some bread. Made some bread, sat back down to meditate. I got a bit of ball pain. And I went, what should I do? I should feel it deeper. So it was really weird, like how, and I was just doing it and it was working. And then I was thinking about making this video and saying, this actually works. This is actually real. You get the right idea. And the right idea was, I'm resisting feeling a deeper feeling from a soulmate. And this is it. It's a new feeling. It's one I haven't had in this life before. So it's always going to start as a pain. Because it's going to come to you. It's got to come into your body. So it begins as a pain. So if you ever get a new pain, you need to praise God. Praise God, I've got a new pain. Right. Sit and feel this. And you might need some bud. Because I did. Because I was just so used to smoking it. Should give up, obviously. Give up, and then I can smoke another one and get really high. So yeah, I'm feeling a bit more now. So once you bring that feeling in, as it moves, it becomes less and less like pain, and more like a nice feeling. And it can be from nice to absolutely bloody wonderful, and anything to do with the soulmate. And I've had quite a lot of work to do with the soulmate. I've definitely made progress, and that new pain on my balls, which I've now been, say, processing and experiencing that feeling as it comes in, and once I knew it was connected to my soulmate, I didn't have to understand any more than that. It was traveling in, and as it travels in, then you begin to understand what it is. And it's not something you can talk about particularly. It's not something you can describe. I could describe uh, a point of a rosebud when it's really tight just before it starts opening, but with light. I was getting sort of visions of that. That's what I'm saying. Very difficult to explain, but whoa, no longer am I not like thinking I might have testicular cancer. I know I'm making more progress in my relationship with my soulmate. And that makes me a happy boy. So that'll do. Ciao for now.